Hi there, Style Attorney here again, and today I want to talk about the Alec Baldwin case. He's been charged with involuntary manslaughter, and it's floating around, and everyone's wondering what's going on. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a New York and Ontario licensed lawyer. I practice in Ontario exclusively, and I've done I don't know how many hearings. I've done hundreds of hearings, trials, guilty pleas, prelims, and I'm actually a trial lawyer. So, I'm interested in this case, and it seems like a lot of people are interested in this case. So, the simple answer is Alec Baldwin is charged with involuntary manslaughter. What's involuntary manslaughter? Well, I'm going to give you a bit of a crash course in law, and hopefully you could understand this. I'll try and explain it as simply as possible. So there's a general broad category in law in a lot of common law jurisdictions like Canada, United States, Great Britain, Australia, where you have the broad category of homicide. And what's a homicide? Homicide is an unlawful killing. And under homicide, you have two branches generally. You have the branch of manslaughter and you have the branch of murder. And under murder, you have first degree, second degree, sometimes you have third degree. You have different degrees of murder. And then you have manslaughter. Generally, a murder is an unlawful killing with premeditation or malice. A lot of American jurisdictions will use the term malice of forethought. So if you have malice or if you intend the killing, that's when you have murder. What's manslaughter? Generally speaking, manslaughter is a killing that's not lawful, because some killings like self-defense are lawful. So manslaughter is an unlawful killing of another human being in a way that wasn't premeditated or deliberate. So he's charged in New Mexico, and I want to break down the New Mexico law and how it applies to him and why he's been charged. So you have murder and you have manslaughter, and I've kind of explained the difference, and that's a general difference. But then there's involuntary manslaughter and there's voluntary manslaughter. So I have the statute in front of me right here, and I'll just read you what it says and I'll explain it further. Involuntary manslaughter consists of manslaughter committed in the commission of an unlawful act not amounting to a felony, or in the commission of a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution and circumspection. Handling a gun on a set, that's not I don't believe that's an unlawful act in New Mexico. I mean, this is the United States and you're handling a gun. It's not an unlawful act. So that part of the involuntary manslaughter, I don't think that that's where they could get him. But then there's a lawful act which might produce death in an unlawful manner or without due caution and circumspection. Firearms are dangerous, right? What's the first rule? Any firearms owners here? Anyone ever go to the range? Anyone ever take a gun course? What's the first rule that they tell you with guns? Assume every firearm is loaded, right? Anytime you handle a firearm, you assume every firearm is loaded. You point it in a safe direction. If you are handling a firearm, especially a loaded firearm, there's a lot of responsibility. There are significant consequences that could come from foolishly handling that, as we see in this case. So you have to assume that every firearm is loaded. And if you don't, it could lead to negative consequences like happened in this case. So if they find that he handled it without due caution and circumspection, right, then they could find him guilty of involuntary manslaughter. But it goes beyond that a little bit. The law in Nevada, it seems like this issue has been litigated quite extensively to the point where they come up with this doctrine of criminal negligence. And basically, criminal negligence, first of all, in order to prove involuntary manslaughter, you have to show that there's criminal negligence. So you have to show kind of carelessness or just not being proper to a point where it's criminal. You could be negligent, but not every amount of negligence is criminal negligence. The law in Nevada, I keep saying Nevada, New Mexico, the law in New Mexico says a conviction of involuntary manslaughter by negative use of a weapon requires negligence, which is ordinary. So the standard is negligence, which is ordinary, and that's what the state would have to prove for him to be convicted of this offense. They have to prove that he was criminally negligent in order for him to be found guilty. Involuntary manslaughter, another thing about involuntary manslaughter, it can be committed by lawful acts and unlawful acts. In this case, again, it doesn't matter whether or not the pointing of the gun, because some jurisdictions have where if you barrel someone with a gun, right, you point a gun towards someone, that could be seen as an assault or an aggravated assault. It doesn't matter if it's legal or not, you could still be found guilty of the offense. The main thing is that you have to have due caution and circumspection in handling a fire. So why might Alec Baldwin be guilty of this offense? One of the reasons is, first of all, he's the actor, but he was also the head honcho. I believe he was the director, or maybe he was the producer of this show. So as the producer or the person that's in charge of a set, you have certain obligations, you have certain duties because you are in charge. So there's rumors that proper procedure wasn't being followed, that the actors weren't happy with how things were going, that there had been some complaints. But if you're going to have firearms and you're going to bring in the firearms, you are responsible for those firearms, for everyone that's under you. But also, if you're the actual person handling the firearm, then you probably should be more responsible. It seems like he believed that it was unloaded, but what's the number one rule of handling firearms? Assume every firearm is loaded, right? You take it, you check it, clear, and then you pass it on. The next guy looks at it and assumes every firearm is loaded. And why do you do that? So we do not have tragic incidents such as this one. Let's talk about sentencing. So let's say Mr. Baldwin's found guilty of this offense. What does he face? There is a minimum, an ordinary sentence of 18 months, right? And that sentence could be increased based on certain factors, but 18 months plus an additional fine of $5,000 generally. But in this case, there are some certain things called aggravating factors, and aggravating factors are circumstances that make an offense worse. So for an example, if you have a previous record, that's an aggravating factor. If people are damaged because of your crime, there's death, that could be an aggravating factor. And there are some that are laid out by statute. So in this case, the one that particularly applies to Alec Baldwin is that if a firearm was used in the commission of the offense, that adds an extra year. So not only is he facing 18 months, he's also facing another year and $5,000 fine. It's a class 4 felony. So there are different ranks of felonies. Class 4 is the lowest felony in New Mexico. So that's what he might be facing. So just in summary, he's charged with involuntary manslaughter. Involuntary manslaughter is an unlawful cause of death, basically by negligence without intent to cause death. And his penalty for doing that looks like it's going to be at least 2.5 years plus a $5,000 fine. What do you think about the situation? Do you think Mr. Baldwin should be prosecuted? If he's prosecuted, do you think he'll be found guilty or innocent? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you like this channel, let me know what you like about it. Let me know ways I can improve, and subscribe, share, like, smash that like button and everything else. And what do you think about the threads? I'm going to be trying to sport flashy suits. Let me know what you think. I might post a link where you could get them. Thanks for watching.